Hi everyone, my name is Vishal Singh and I'll be teaching you chess today. So in the previous class, we had learned how to create an attack using the pawn. And I had also talked about the n passant if you guys remember. So I'll be going more deeply into about n passant today. And if we have time, we'll even start with creating a check. I mean, threatening the opposite team's king. All right, so I taught you how to get out of a check. Now I'll be teaching you how to create a check. I hope you guys remember how to get out of a check. Uh, you guys remember CPR, right? Capture, protect, and run. I hope you guys do. If not, please do watch the previous video. Not the previous one, but how to get out of the check video. So we'll be starting with the end passage. All right, I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay. So about end passant. Now the end passant can only take place if suppose you're playing as white and your white pawn is on the fifth rank. Now this is specific to white. Suppose if you're playing as black, your pawn should be on the fourth rank. Okay. Now what end passant is basically, suppose your white pawn is on the fifth rank and the black enemy pawn plays this pawn to d5. It has played two moves, two boxes, right? Now what happened is, suppose this pawn did sprint, but it did go through d6, the sixth rank, right? So you have a chance to capture it midway. This is what end passant is, and end passant can only take place right after the enemy pawn has moved. If you played some other move and you're like, okay, I'll capture it like 3 or 4 moves later, you cannot do that. You have to immediately capture the enemy pawn. Now if you're playing as white again, your pawn should be on the fifth rank and the enemy pawn should have at least moved 2 blocks at a time, basically the sprint. But if the pawn came to the sixth rank, you can just directly capture it. That would not be end passant. Okay, now if suppose you're on the C file, your white pawn is on the C file and on the fifth rank. Okay, and suppose this enemy pawn has played pawn to B5. So you can capture it on both the sides. It's not like you can only capture it on the right side or the left side. Your white pawn can do the end passant on both the sides. It still captures in a diagonal way. Remember the end passant, the pawn still in the end passant, the pawn will still capture in a diagonal manner only. Okay. Now that I've made this clear, does the conditions fit? Let's check. So our pawn is on the fifth rank. This condition is met. The enemy pawn has sprinted, has moved 2 blocks, meaning it has passed through the sixth rank. So that condition has met. Now, now I have a next move, right? The enemy just played this. So it's my turn and I had not played any other moves. So if it's my turn, I can still capture it. So that condition is also met. Let's try. See, the computer program itself is offering me an option to capture the enemy pawn. Simple. Yeah. Now the new move is this. This move has been played and then I had played this move, suppose. And then the enemy had played pawn to g5. Now I do not have an option to capture this pawn anymore. Why? Because this is the new move. This pawn to g5 is the new move. I can only capture this now because this is the new move and it's my turn now, right after the pawn has printed two blocks. Got it? So this chance I have wasted. I cannot do the end passant over anymore. Really simple. Okay, great. Yeah. Now suppose if your pawn is on the sixth rank and the enemy pawn had sprinted to the fifth rank, you still cannot do the end passant. If you're playing as white, your pawn must be on the fifth rank. And if you're playing as black, your pawn must be on the fourth rank in order to do the end passant. Got it? I had taught you this in the previous. Wait, I'll just show it to you one more, guys. Again, if you want. Just a second. See, here you're playing as black. I showed you this in the previous video. The white had played pawn to c4, and you're playing as black. So your pawn is on the fourth rank. This condition has been met. The enemy pawn, the white, has printed 2 blocks. This condition has been met. So you are capable of doing the end passant at the moment. See, the program is offering me to diagonally capture the enemy pawn. See, this is how it works if you're playing as black. Simple. Okay, let's go back. Now, if your pawn is at the 6th rank, you cannot do the end passant. You can only do it if your white pawn is on the 5th rank. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now the end passant will only work if your file in which your pawn lies is right next to the enemy files. Got it? Suppose the enemy has just played this move pawn to b5. So you are only capable of capturing that, only capable of performing end passant using the file right next to this files. Meaning you cannot capture it with the pawn at d5 like this. The pawns do not capture that way. It can only capture one block diagonally. Remember? So if suppose if I had a pawn at a5, it can capture this pawn. It can capture this enemy pawn at b5, and this pawn, my pawn at c5, is capable of capturing the enemy pawn at b5. So these are the only 2 blocks where I can perform the end passant on this pawn. The pawn at d5 is not capable of doing the end passant over here. The pawn at e5 is not capable, and neither is the pawn at h5. Remember? Got it? Okay, moving on. See, really simple. Now, similarly, now the enemy has played a pawn to f5. Do you think my pawn at d5 is capable of performing in passant? No, right? Why? Because there's a whole e file in between these f and d file. So you cannot perform. Your file has to be right next to the enemy file where the pawn has moved 2 blocks. Got it? Okay, moving on. Yeah. Okay, again, very simple. And finally, okay. Okay. So that was all about end passant. Again, remember, uh, if the enemy has just printed 2 blocks and it's your turn next, only then you are capable of performing end passant. If you had played any other move, you cannot then again try to perform end passant on the same piece. Okay, you cannot think like, okay, I'll do this like three or four moves later. That's not possible. You immediately have to play the end passant as soon as the enemy pawn has moved 2 blocks. Once that turn is gone, it's gone. All right. So that was all about the end passant. And again, I'll give you a brief because it's really important and people tend to forget about it. Remember, if if you're playing as white, your white pawn needs to be on the 5th rank. If you're playing as black, your black pawn needs to be on the 4th rank. And the enemy pawn should have moved 2 blocks right next to your file. Only then you are capable of performing the end passant. Okay, that was a short brief. Okay, now end passant is over. We'll be starting with creating a check. Okay, I had taught you how to get out of a check. Now we'll be doing this really simple exercise of creating a check. And right after this, we'll be moving. I'll be giving you puzzles or lives. How you will be creating checks in an actual game, a live situation. Okay, all right. So here you're playing as white. It's quite simple how to give it a check. It's very simple. You just have to, how a rook moves, right? It can only move in straight lines. So do you think moving your rook to a8 would be a good option? Think? No, right? Why? Okay, let's try. See, the bishop was over there to capture the our rook. So the only option left, because the rook can attack in straight lines only, is e1. So that is how you will be you will be giving a threat to the king. Really simple. Okay. So now over here, again, the queen can again remember how the piece moves before you think and answer. Yeah, just a minute. The queen can move in any direction. So there are three options we have. We can either attack it like this, or we can play our queen to e3 and attack it like this. But are any of these options good options? Think again, pause the video and then come back. They're not. Why? Because both of these block boxes are under the knight's attack range. So as soon as you move over there, the knight will simply capture your queen, and that would be a disastrous move. So we have to avoid that. So the third option only being left is queen to h3. Why? Because the queen can even attack diagonally, so that would be a perfectly fine option. Got it? Okay. So that was all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys understood what the n passant is. It is actually quite tricky, and I'll be completing creating a check in the next class, and hopefully I will finish that as well. Okay. So that was all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys next time. Bye bye.